Reddit, what is the stupidest way you almost died? Went to go visit a friend in Gloucester, Mass. In winter back in high school far from my home. I was planning on staying overnight at their house, but their mother, who I now know has mental health problems, wouldn't even let me in the house because the father wasn't home working a night shift. Friend said sorry bro and closed the door. Almost froze to death waiting outside in 10° Fahrenheit at night. A cab driver saw me slumped on a bench and woke me up. Let me get warm and drive around in the passenger seat while he picked up drunk people out on the town all night. When he finished his shift, he dropped me off at the train station and handed me $7 for the fare. Dude probably saved my life and I can't even remember his name. Story 2. Swam under a shipyard pier at night with solid concrete above me and lost my sense of direction. Got lucky and found my way out. To add more detail, a friend and I were assault swimmers attacking a ship for a training exercise at night. We would swim from pier pylon to pylon underwater. Take a breath, go under, push off, and swim about 20 feet to the next pylon, surface and repeat. My mask broke and I was doing it with my eyes closed due to having contacts at the time. One time I just kept swimming and felt like I missed the pylon. When I went to slowly broach the surface, I found myself under the concrete above. It looked dark in all directions, but my gut told me to the right is where I came from. Story 3. Stuck my head out the car window. BC, I wanted to see why dogs loved it. My grandpa didn't notice, rolled up the window, and I choked. He freaked out when he heard the cat-like noises, ironic, I was making while my neck was trying to squeeze through the small opening of the window, but kept raising the window in his panic. Eventually he got it and I was left with a red mark on my neck and no closer to understanding dogs. Story 4. I was at a water park in Texas with one of those super tall, straight down slides. They had multiple signs saying things like do not push off before sliding down. Me being an 18-year-old idiot and wanting to race my friend, I decided to push off. That extra push started my slow motion, airborne flight over the slide. I was then staring 100 feet down at concrete and my other friend who had his jaw open. What felt like minutes later, I smacked back down onto the slide and made my way down to the bottom. Thank God for the engineers that plan for suicidal idiots like myself. Story 5. I walked into a back room freezer of a grocery store. The huge door was designed to close automatically. I knew this and went in and did what I was there to do. After 30 seconds, I couldn't catch my breath. I thought maybe I was just working too hard, so I stopped and took several huge breaths. Nothing. I felt like I was drowning out of water. I had to move as quickly as I could back outside of the freezer and feel to my knees gasping when I got out. It was only afterwards I realized for some dumb reason someone kept open dry ice in a cart inside of the freezer. Dry ice removes oxygen out of the air in enclosed spaces. I almost died from lack of oxygen and would have been an icicle when they found me. Don't fuck with dry ice. Story 6. I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. I was getting off the school bus and was walking around to the other side to my driveway. Suddenly the bus driver hits the horn, scared the hell out of me, and I stopped at the edge of the front of a bus and a dump truck good speeding around. I dunno if the dump truck driver didn't see the lights of the bus or whatever, but that driver made a dumb mistake that could have cost me my life. Thinking about it, my older sister was up at our driveway waiting for me, probably would have messed her up for life. After that the school district changed bus routes to avoid students having to cross the road to get on or off the bus. Story 7. I didn't look before I crossed the street. Walked backwards while talking to my friend, got hit by a van. I wasn't wearing my medic alert bracelet to warn the paramedics and hospital that I'm allergic to Demerol, because it looks dumb and gets caught on my backpack. Besides, what are the chances I'd ever be given that? The chances, it turns out, are pretty good if you get hit by a van going full speed hard enough to nearly rip your foot off at the ankle. I survived. 7 surgeries to patch me back up. Was comatose for a little bit. Had some blood transfusions. Massive amounts of physiotherapy. I didn't look before I crossed the street. Walked backwards while... Story 8. God, I completely fucking forgot. When I was like 14 or 15, I found out about breath play from some dumb adult comedy show we shouldn't have been watching. I was curious and dumb, so when I went to bed that night I stuck my head inside my pillowcase, with the pillow over my face, and tied it on tightly with a bathrobe cord. Of course my dumb little fucking idiot self couldn't get it untied again. I freaked out and was just going nuts, pulling on any random bit of cord I could get my fingers into, trying to pull the pillow off, but all I was doing was compressing the knots down tighter. I remember feeling really dizzy and rapidly seesawing between desperately sucking in hot wet breaths of carbon dioxide, and then just going completely still and feeling like I didn't need to breathe anymore, like I could just lie there peacefully, then suddenly going back to gasping for air again. Somehow I eventually wiggled enough slack out of the cord to be able to get one of the loops up over my chin so I could pull the pillow away from my mouth, and all I could do for a few minutes was just lay there and breathe. I will never forget how cold and wonderful that first breath of proper air was. Fucking dumb little shit. Story 9. Waited too long to go to the hospital. Pre-COVID, I thought I just had a cold. Husband said, go to the doctor. I said no. 3 days later, still not great. Husband said, go to urgent care. I said I will if I don't feel better tomorrow. Next day, I tell husband, I need to go to the ER. A collapsed lung due to pneumonia. 3 days in hospital plus breathing issues for the next year. Moral: listen to your spouse. And yeah, got a whole lot of I told you so-s. Deserved every one of them. Story 10. I was at Lake Bled in Slovenia and thought I could easily swim the distance between the shore and the island in the middle with the church on it. Boy was I wrong. About halfway I started getting exhausted and had trouble staying afloat. Then my body kicked into survival mode, the adrenaline started pumping, and I Michael Phelps the rest of the way to the island. I ended up paying €5 to have a boat take me back to shore after that harrowing experience. Story 11. When I was a kid, I dipped my toes into a flooded creek to see how it felt. Proceeded to get sucked into said creek and nearly washed away. Thankfully, the creek had some overgrown areas, and I was able to cling to a tree in the middle of the flood water and scream for help. This happened directly behind my house, so my dog heard me, alerted my dad, and my dad managed to rescue me. What makes this extra stupid was that I was trying to prevent my friend at the time from doing the same thing. He wanted to surf down the creek on a snow sled. I was following him, telling him it was a bad idea, and then like a dumbass, I ended up in the creek instead. He also gave me shit afterwards for ruining his stunt. Kids are fucking stupid, I guess. Story 12. Had experience snowboarding and went with some friends up a Black Diamond run. I was scared to fall so I would squat so I would have less distance to fall. The person reading this laughing so far knows this makes you go faster. So anywho, I took a tumble worse than Scarlet while going full speed and felt lightness except my hand caught what I thought was a branch. When the snow cleared, my hand was wrapped up in a red safety net and I was hanging about 4 stories off the mountain. That was the most committed pull-up of my life. Great times. Story 13. Choked on a small potato at the Pizza Hut salad bar. Completely lodged in my throat. I raced to the loo and shoved my fingers down my throat, and it popped out. Walked back to my table and finished my salad. Edit: I was with my boyfriend. He did nothing. I grabbed the waitress's arm. All she did was say, "Is she okay?" to my boyfriend. Hence running to the loo to deal with it myself. Story 14. I was riding my bike to either the school or the supermarket, I can't remember. I was maybe like 12-13 years old. In my town you can't really ride a bike on the street, so I had to use the sidewalk. On my way I had to ride across a bus stop with a ton of people just blocking the way for me and my bike. So I decided to hop onto the street, and up onto the sidewalk again later. Those people were blocking my view, so I didn't see a bus coming my way. I just barely hopped onto the sidewalk and the bus missed me by a few centimeters. After that, I didn't really understand what happened. A few hours later it hit me that this could have ended rather bad for me. Story 15. I was at a Pink Floyd concert at the old Tampa Stadium, was going to get a beer. I got crushed against a wall, at the bottom of a stairway, when a rush of people came up the breezeway. I couldn't move, or breathe, probably 100 or more people in a log jam. I'm not a big person, started to panic, looked up and a guy looked over the rail above me. He started yelling to me to reach for his hand. He leaned way over and grabbed my hand and pulled me up. Like 8 or 9 feet, and over the rail. Took a few minutes to get a breath. He had the security guy get the medic to check me over. Freaky, close to a very bad ending. Story 16. In my early teens a bunch of us kids would get super stoned and boogie board down the local river. The river was probably a class 3 at its gnarliest and an easy class 2 for the majority of the float. Well anyways, the first time we went down the river a massive maple, a strainer, had uprooted and fallen directly perpendicular into the river. It looked super cool, so my plan was to paddle over to the crown of it and climb atop it when I got close. Well anyways, I missed my mark and headed towards the trunk instead. The water was much too deep to do any jumping and the speed had picked up around the tree. I crashed into the trunk and my body was pinned directly under the trunk. I remember being able to reach my hands out of water and could see the water line but physically could not unpin my body. Luckily my friend was a ways back and saw everything. He successfully jumped atop the crown, ran down the trunk to where my arms were flailing out of the water and pulled my body up and over. We both crashed into the water on the other side and he paddled us to shore. Story 17. Stood on a stack of lawn chairs, back legs of bottom chair gave way. I fell with the chairs, cracked the back of my head open on the pavement below. Blacked out several times on the way to the hospital, have very little memory of the actual event. Doc somehow glued his thumb to my laceration, yanked that shit off, causing the most unimaginable pain ever. The next few months is a complete blur. I have absolutely no recollection of what happened. Only that while in school, some dickhead threw a Lego brick at me, hit my injury. Motherfucking bitch titties, did that hurt. I cried. Stood in something I shouldn't have, promptly fell, almost killed myself. Somehow avoided brain damage too. I think anyway.